Hello, America. Everyone keeps missing because the leaders, locations, areas, and states, they change the faith with what they say, with the foreign or them. The difference of that, too, for a breaching method. A through Z have been systems tactical terror from the human species body of individual bodies, all group differences generated by that, which shows us what we are by. Because it has the other species bodies too, quality aspects, nature distinct but non-distinct and simultaneous, but also per that a distinct identity of simultaneous nature, not us nor them, but it has all things anyway. We didn't invent how all these different species have quality aspects in nature distinct from ourselves, but also non-distinct. And they didn't invent it. It is hyper invisible, but still discernible. Conjunction to all parts of English grammar, too. And all parts of speech of English grammar about the invisible, but still discernible, slash hyper discern, invisible, but still discernible. And where its individual body can be discerned this way, like how is neither. It has a whole totally different species, birds, fish. They have two eyes, quality aspects, nature, consciousness, to an extent, distinct but non-distinct, and simultaneous. But again, per that further, hyper simultaneous. Tariffs. The president said, for example, about tariffs, they're about reparations, and then about love. Hopefully. But no one could get to that because everyone's forcing a sick nature. They're forcing that, including they're mean to the leaders, no matter who. If there was five parties, in other words, everything good. We have a breaching method that has other things, others ourselves, originally and still blamed for things that it caused, and it kept rolls with that. Which was and is changing what nature was and is demonstrating to humanity. Replaced are the very communications of our founders, plural, and James Madison's plan, their use of it. They refer to them. I read that we were directed to refer to our founders, plural. They asked to be referred to as James Madison, singular, so it would be clear. And then they went and got George Washington counter-extorted it too. And to counter-extort the other founders, to force them together to break the rules of the breaching method, the internationally entrenched breaching method. And they had an extent of the help of the other countries that were involved because they too were by the breaching method. That since some ancient times they had A through Z, not one of them had possession of their identities. See suits and ties, counters, exceptions. They have suburbs that were designed for torture, extortion, and slavery before our founders were born, before cars. The only reason that appears to be debatable is because you guys have had other pretended was the cause of the Declaration of Independence and of the Constitutional Convention. Then was declassified for us to understand. We know it, but instead they restrict it and have other talk. And while there are roles with this, they are increasingly self-valuing this having been. It was declassified in many ways. Our founders did not have free speech, and everyone had to pretend others simultaneously to an extent. Otherwise, that body would be sent, and that would be adapted to in sick ways, and also not in ways not even realized. That's how it's still staying at A through Z. America to Russia to Ukraine, they have suburbs that look almost exactly alike. And again, it's even though it's different than it was then, it's still that scale. In other words, the whole entire ocean is polluted, even though we have means to traverse the earth. There are serious things. There's difference of intelligence. So you guys have nature debate, and you got anything to keep the other things other yourselves blamed. Then the breaching method also has the scientific value, forced to be. You guys have roles of being forcing that from its value. It is an inseparable answer /S and critical part of the Constitution unabridged, which has never been. We have only heard criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions wrought readings of statutes and precedents, and or of exceptions and of exception nature. Simultaneously, might even Lord, thank God, originally and still. There's a subject's part that is sick, like with witch trials. You don't separate what witch trials are from the crazy slavery laws against everyone. And sickly distinctly, factually nature wise, therefore physically. That's why and how they had it so sickly distinctly against us all with black pupils, whites of eyes, changing with the, and this is north and south entrenched. And you guys are framing our founders for slaves, for being slaveholders. Exactly the way the breaching method wants and needed you to. It's teaching our history. It's telling the lawyers and the judges to value lies about the American Revolution. George Washington came with James Madison's plan and had to counter extort at Webb House in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut, which they've renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, furthering screen and apparent even when real motivations for why and how they would rename that and defend with sense and sensibilities to know. And with factual nature, quiet aspects in nature, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Other communicated about that place, right next to a witch child's place, where George Washington had to come to counter extort right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War to force the other founders' help, to force them to be founders, Native Americans and colonists alike. But there are proofs that there are 3/3 of a Native American founders. Those that agree want to be, there are proofs were behind the plural part that they said to refer to as James Madison singular. And it has the value of the Constitution unabridged, which cares for Native Americans too, other than we've had lawyers capable of appreciating. Other than we've had the names of the people of the sciences capable of appreciating. Because of these expert leans that the breaching method showed them to self-value. The experts have used their knowledge of good and evil now to get over on correlation nature, to get over on identity volume / hypervolume science as the species volume science. See, as a special difference science. Earth has an special difference, only the extent of it is debatable. See, such in the nature of the debate, we would have answers and revelations as the ancients had. There are proofs that the ancients couldn't fathom. Someone could be able to force, trick, and persuade people to forget how to cause evolution's fruits and gifts means out of nowhere. Little kids from suburbs across the country for decades. We've had ability to know that since we're kids. This is not our might. This is not order, but as a criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw nature of order. Incapable of appreciating that which is hypernated pure, which is that unabridged. So how could they appreciate that which is Native American, which is about what being hyper additional nature? It's not about who agrees with what, or even if who like what. They have with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Wethersfield police are refusing to get on paper since I was a little kid. They attached me to fake conversations with them as a little kid and then as an adult. Forgiveness is because you have the names of the people of sciences that were child abused because they came through child abuse campuses that are with criminally foreign influence, factual nature, quiet aspects in nature, roles of predicate acts with facts, roles with tactical delusions. These shootings in cities. The breaching method showed that names of the people of sciences, how they can self-value past, and how they can get away with it now active forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading other things others ourselves blame for things that nature communicates for us to properly with blame. And our founders told us not to, they didn't communicate that they had free speech. They communicated that even how everyone's motivations for roles with the Constitutional Convention and the Declaration of Independence, they had to lie about that. There was slavery entrenched. Again, it's everyone, but I'm saying it's just even overtly northern colonies and southern colonies. Now, all this time, there were all these arguments and fights that wouldn't have been, and or the whole nature of it would have been changed had everyone clearer than day. No, before America's founders were even born, there was slavery entrenched, northern colonies, southern colonies, and the nature of debate regarding with that. And all those databases, we know they were criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, involved with torture, extortion, fact-cheap nature, slavery against every single person for their differences, for other people's differences, and for the difference of that. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. This breaching method has us tactically ulterior from this system that shows us it's different. It's hyper different. And the difference of that, it shows us how part of itself is a simultaneous nature part, and here, and it will only stay positive onto itself. Further, where it is already relativity to positive and negative equally. It's a quality of diffusion as you are, because all things are as it is. But as a special thing, we could ignore its system, but it will force negative value nature progressions, acts in nature. Not physically. I mean that too, but not like that. It's a quality diffusion. Only reason it took so long, and it's taken so long because humanity is only one species of the many species, but we are that is criminally foreign influence. Systems tactical ulterior from its with communications, from its identity of relativity to positive and negative, distinctly where it is a simultaneous nature, distinctly from where it is not juxtaposed with matter, and distinctly from where and how it is anyway. It is for its parts of itself, like cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall. They're distinct identities of the same shared identity as the cell, and the cell walls are connected. And the body of life is coming through this, appreciating gases and water in its element, appreciating because it has the hyper invisible but still discernible as identity, A through Z. Here Anthony vaccines. See alpha inside the name alphabet. This is a breaching method that arranged as the identities of theater, the names of the people of the sciences, as a certain type of victim / hyper victim, as criminal insidiousness nature / hyper criminal insidiousness nature, as three natures of it, relative to where and to how. The breaching method uses location / S, everywhere the human species body has a body standing, demanding more as one. We have YouTube. We have the phenomenon. We can just make a video about, boom, we're making the steps to make the world better. We have to understand how even peaceful nuclear generation, energy generation, because people have to keep their mouth shut. And when did anyone have the integrity to keep their mouth shut or to open it or to speak about the difference? No. We're going to be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. And that will be fine. We'll discern again how to reveal evolution's fruits, gifts, means that out of nowhere, and how and why the republic for which we stand, America, cannot function properly without the campus marcias and unabridged, the Constitution, and understand why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them, let alone to people still in collusions with predicate acts with facts, databases, all kinds of natures of organized crimes. and medicines crimes with the courts and the judicial branch offices and corrections offices. And they have the nerve to put people in jails for drugs. Well, they have rules with crimes at crime scenes and next to body dumping spots with the people in the prisons, in the courts, switching, forging names, they've been all kinds of predicate acts with facts. Not even Lord, thank God. Because we have good people. We have to show them how to be hyper good, not criminal and ceaseless natures of good as tools. That have only been, well, that's that. In other words, when you were little kids, we're going to show you how to speak about this as hyper criminal foreign influences, hyper criminal foreign influences. For example, no, not even Lord, but no. And we're going to examine how northern colonies and southern colonies were possessions of different countries themselves have already possessed / hyper possessed since semi-ancient times. Already the campuses had become influenced from off them. And it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded people more and more and more incapable of affording to be, let alone to protract short words with convictions, let alone convictions with guilt, let alone convictions with guilt, leaving out the breaching method. Exactly the way it needed until things were real. Even so, like, it got people to counter what it did wrong and then to defend that and self-value that. It gets those people to counter them wrong, defend that, self-value that. And it built that A through Z. It built simultaneously more and more people incapable of being led by the identity the sciences share. Of seeing. It is valuing the predicate as it is the identities the sciences share. So it is the identity of English. Where is that identity distinctly? It is valuing the predicate, while it is the same identity as the law that is valuing the predicate act. And everything is about the invisible / hyper-invisible, but still discernible. 3 identities of relationship to itself that come with the greater nature, as the greater nature of itself, with the individual part of itself, that we could discern to an extent, the individual body. That is the identity that's showing us the species volumes, distinct species volumes in our own individual species body of individual bodies, with all group differences being generated by its own. We are showing its body as the identity that is in our identity of relationship to its identity. That is the value of seasons to come, even if they never get here. So, in other words, we have been systems tactical tariff from its own, tactical tariff from the hypernative. So, thank you. So, in other words, tariffs are to get communications. And the reason every side is named for the same reason, though. And every side is sickly, has been sickly, distinctly hurt. Specifically, too, to keep people incapable of understanding the science of inequality properly. Which means you have to understand how that body, to an extent we can discern, that is neither us nor the other species bodies, but is all things anyway. It is the identity, with its identity relationship to the value of that. Of why and how everything has other completely different species bodies have 2 eyes. For example, it is neither us nor them, but it is its identity. But that is all things anyway. We can observe it with art. It is distinctly possession, hyper possession. To, from, as, with, and for the finite, smallest finite details, or the order of the finite. Distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously is the active, grouped details. Relativity / hyperrelativity, no. And the progressive Again, like the value of seasons that are not even here yet. But now we are systems tax military than its own. And here we are forced to negotiate about such critical things. People in our history. To understand the principles of history, one must understand that our founders' communications and how they did not have free speech, and how nature shows that communications is greater than what is said alone. And there are whole predicate acts with facts methods that we can discern here. The whole answers being haven't been replaced. I'll pace. All right, thank you. Have a great Easter. Happy Easter.